KCSE exams get underway across 10,700 centers countrywide this morning, beginning with practical exams in French, German, Arabic, Kenyan Sign Language, and music.
Confusion as President William Ruto declares there will be no El Nino phenomenon as expected, but goes ahead to forecast above average rainfall starting this month.
And the National Dialogue Committee proceeds on a 5-day retreat in Nakuru to review and discuss submissions and memoranda presented to the team by the public and other stakeholders.
Well, yes, the long weekend is over and we're back. This is Morning Cafe. We serve the hottest coffee in town. My name is Fred Indimuli, and admittedly, I've already started my Christmas countdown, and it is exactly 63 days to Christmas.
Wow. Already?
Yes.
Good morning. It's good to have you here on Morning Cafe. This is a Monday, the 23rd of October 2023. It is also the day that the KCSE exams are officially kickstarting 2023 KCSE exams, and remember, this is the official transition to the competency-based curriculum, so they are quite significant for this year. And even as we start, we want to wish all the candidates all the best as they start their exams. Hello, I'm Flora Limuke.
And I'm used to only standing in Ringeta. Speaking of the national exams, well, it's a whole reminder of back then. How's yours, by the way? And also, what's your message to the candidates sitting for their KCSE exams this particular morning? You can chime in on the conversation from right now all the way to 10 a.m. We'll be sampling some of your feedback on Facebook at TV47KE and on Twitter, rather X, at TV47 News, at Limuki_F, at Fred Indimuli, and at Nyerungita_, that is on X. We'll be taking a look at that. What's your message to the candidates this particular morning? Away from that, this particular morning we'll be taking a look at a game called woodball and just understanding it. Well, some people call it the poor man's golf. So we're taking a look at how woodball is played. Let's get the top story this particular morning.
To the top story now, over 900,000 candidates are gearing up for the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education exams, which start this morning countrywide. The assessments will be conducted across a vast network of close to 10,700 examination centers across the country. This morning, candidates will begin their oral language exams in French, German, Arabic, and Kenyan Sign Language, with practicals in music also to be conducted. Some of these exams could stretch to Friday this week. Now, the Kenya National Examinations Council conducted rehearsals for the examinations last Thursday, assuring that all operational aspects are in place to facilitate the smooth administration of the national exams. The council has engaged 1,700 officers from different organizations to monitor the exercise countrywide. And so today we're asking you to share your message on for this year's KCSE candidates as they sit for their national exams. So what's your message for this year's KCSE candidates as they sit for their national exams? Continue sharing that on our social media pages at TV47 News on X and TV47 Kenya on Facebook. Let's now get the day's diary.
Well, and on today's diary, we start with the Kawira Mwangaza impeachment motion. The Meru County residents and stakeholders as to begin delivering their submissions to the clerk of the Meru County Assembly today ahead of the MCA's heading to the Senate to submit the impeachment motion this week. And it is at the annual Legal Awareness Week, and the Law Society of Kenya is set to hold the Legal Awareness Week from today all the way to Friday. This event will officially be opened at Milimani Law Courts today by the Director of Public Prosecutions in Gonga. And away from that, it's KCSE Day 1. This year's national examinations are kickstart today as they mark a significant transition, signaling the conclusion of the 844 education system as Kenya embarks on a new chapter under the competency-based curriculum, CBC. And it is, we also expect there's a section of leaders from the Azimio coalition allied to the Kamwene Forum, led by NARC Kenya Party leader Martha Karua and former CS Peter Munya, to officially launch the Kamwene Unity Forum chapters at Ufungamano House this morning. And today is the National TV Talk Show Host Day, and this day is set aside to celebrate iconic figures from yesteryear to present in the media industry. And today in history, on this day in 1983, suicide bombers drove truckloads of high explosives into the barracks of U.S. Marines and French paratroopers in Beirut, killing 241 U.S. servicemen and 58 French troops. That is what we have on our diary this morning. Of course, we keep on updating you as the show moves on.
Let me take you back to, you said today is what day?
Today is National TV Talk Show Host Day.
Okay. Do we qualify for that?
We do.
So we should be celebrating today.
Oh, yeah.
The national TV, but national, which nation? Yeah. Definitely not Kenya, but we can adopt that celebration.
Yeah.
National TV Talk Show Day.
But then even as we cross to the dailies, you're talking about Kamwene and reminded that we will be having that particular exclusive interview by NARC Kenya leader, Martha Karua.
Oh yeah, that one is later on tonight on the Daily Report. You do not want to miss that interview.
9 p.m.
With George Maringa.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's been long since we had Martha Karua.
It's an exclusive only to TV47.
Oh,
so, yes.
Amazing.
It reminds me, you had a sit down with her. Now I'm even curious, even before you actually watch the interview. I'm curious what she actually said.
I will tell you to wait for the interview. It's coming on tonight, exclusive to TV47. Better tune in for that one. Nyaringita, so unajua mali TV47 iko.
Oh yes.
Hapo.
And speaking of, waiting and waiting and waiting, Ruto is now saying that we really have to wait for the El Nino, or not. Maybe it is actually not coming. Even as we dive into the dailies, Fred, you can dive into the Standard.
Yes, let's kick off our daily newspaper review with the Standard this Monday. The big headline there, Titan belts as Ruto Care comes at an extra cost. And I remember us mentioning this sometime last week.
Yeah.
The health burden. With a new formula for contribution to Medicare starting, employees will have to pay more to realize the president's dream of affordable health care for all. The story is extensively covered on pages 2 and 3 of the Standard. And on NHIF, there's a new deduction on NHIF here and the one on housing levy. And what the Standard has done is given possible payslip outlooks. There's a payslip simulator on gross pay. On the front page, the gross pay is 90,000, and on that one, the housing levy, you pay 1,350, and NHIF 2,475, up from 1,200 at the beginning of the year, meaning that you'll have a reduction in pay of approximately 2,574 shillings 75 cents once this new deduction is implemented. They've done other simulations on page 2. On a gross pay of 100,000, on a gross pay of 510,000, on a gross pay of 830,000, which probably is what our legislators earn. And on that, they will have a deduction, an extra reduction in pay of 35,540 shillings and 75 cents, simply because of the new reduction on what they're now calling the Ruto Care. Remember, those bills that the president signed into law just a day before Mashujaa Day, that was on Thursday last week, include a 2.75% reduction in gross pay for the new health insurance fund. And so this is something to expect. So yes, that's a big headline on the front page of the Standard. Other big news featuring on the front page of the Standard today, Trace Awards, Kenyans shine, but Nigerians reign. The story is on page 8. This is to do with entertainment. In business, shilling set to breach the 160 mark to the dollar. is on page 20. And this, for those people who have dollar reserves, this is really good news. For those who have no dollars and you need to import, pain to you, war unto you. On the top strip of the Standard are the highlights there. And on the national pages, 4 and 5, ticking time bomb. That is Mavoko land. And it goes on to it reflects the story that we talked about for many of the days last week on the demolitions going on in Mavoko, on that land that belongs to the East Africa Portland Cement Company. They're calling it a ticking time bomb. On the international pages, Israel, Hamas take war to social media. That's on the world page 23 on the Standard. On the health and science pullout of the Standard this Monday, my fibroid story, I dream of becoming a mum. And in sports, Jepchirchir inches closer to Olympic glory, and that's on pages 30 and 31. That's a back page 32. On sports highlights, Gor Mahia quench thirst with cold Tusker on warm afternoon. I love that headline. Despite the fact that it could be. Anyway. Tusker chairman threatened to sack Matano if Tusker lost to Gor yesterday. New coach, same problem for Leopards as they remain winless in 7 matches. And in that game, Gor Mahia beat Tusker FC 1-0. Other results from the FKF Premier League at the weekend. Moranga Seals drew 0-0 with Bidco United. Bandari beat FC Leopards 1-0. Kariobangi Sharks drew 1-1 with Mohoroni Youth. And Shabana and Nairobi City Stars settled to a 2-2 draw.
And I remember yesterday the atmosphere around Kasarani Stadium was just quite different. With Gor Mahia fans just chanting and, all the drums and everything there.
Yeah.
It was just one of those games you really have to watch.
And we have an AFC Leopards fan number 1, Director Emmanuel, and he's just reminding me that AFC Leopards is somewhere on page 3 of the FKF league table on number 17. But anyway, they could improve.
They should learn from Manu how to
that
score
is it is a relegation threatened as it stands right now. But you never know, things could change. I highlight there, Arsenal on Saturday battled from 2 goals down to secure a 2-2 draw with Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. That was interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Manu was out here scoring goals.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But where on the league table is Manu?
Is it number 13 or 9?
Where do you find them again?
Swiftly.
I think below 10 there.
And that's a Standard this morning.
Moving on swiftly.
All right, let's have a look at the Daily Nation this morning. And they have an interesting headline this morning, Kenya's phone theft syndicate. And many Kenyans admit to having lost their phones to snatchers and muggers on motorcycles, on foot, in matatus, or at nightclubs. But the brazen tactics employed by the criminals have reached alarming levels, with the stolen devices being flashed and smuggled to neighboring countries and ready markets. That story is on page 2 and 3 on the Daily Nation. And in numbers there, every 10 minutes someone loses a phone to muggers. Each police station records at least 5 cases of phone theft every day, and number can be even higher. The DCI and Safaricom Airtel shops busiest on Mondays as victims of weekend thefts rush to replace SIM cards. Also, DCI has engaged Interpol to help the cross-border smuggling of gadgets, and increased taxes have led to higher prices of smartphones, fueling theft of devices. Stanley, you look like you've ever been mad.
No, actually never.
Oh, really?
Never.
Freddie?
Oh, well.
Not once.
I've been in Nairobi for a while, so yes, you have to meet those people once in a while.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not jinxing it, hopefully. Hopefully this year ends peacefully. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and on the top strip of the Daily Nation, some matters El Nino there, and Ruto now plays down prediction of El Nino rains in the country. Interesting turn of events there on page 4, and we hope, let's see how it turns out.
tucheze chini ya maji.
Yeah.
Figuratively speaking.
Because I'm seeing a scenario where we have El Nino. Now, what do you say next? All right, moving on swiftly.
We thank God for the rains.
Paul McKinsey was inspired by Australian cultist, says SIGNET ad hoc committee, and that story there is on page 10 of the Daily Nation, of course, and that comprehensive final report by the ad hoc committee led by Tana River Senator Danson Mungatana. And on the right strip of the Daily Nation, Pakistani journalist could have survived shooting, says doctors. And there Ashad Sharif, a Pakistani journalist who was killed in Kenya a year ago, would have survived if he had been rushed to hospital after being shot. That is according to the pathologist report. And that story there is on page 8 of the Daily Nation this morning. In matters world news, Israel steps up Gaza strikes ahead of ground invasion. And the story there is covered on page 18 of the Daily Nation. And another about turn in terms of words said by the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, we are all equal shareholders, Gachagua now says. And from where, I quote him, from where my boss, Dr. Ruto, and I sit, the elections are over and we want all Kenyans to unite for the sake of the development of this country. An election is like a sport and should not cause any enmity amongst Kenyans. DP Gachagua there saying that we are now all shareholders. That story there is on page 7 of the Daily Nation this morning. And looking at the back page of the Daily Nation, Britain Matano remains at Tusker, and Gor defeat Tusker via a controversial goal, but the threat of sacking Brewers coach turns to talk of Robert Matano's boys come live. That is what we have on the Daily Nation this morning.
Kwingineko katika gazeti la Taifa Leo, Gachagua ajipanga. Taifa Leo dokeza kuwa azidisha juhudi za kuunganisha Mlima Kenya, yeye akiwa kiongozi wao akilenga kupata usemi mkuu kitaifa. In masuala ya kisiasa katika tukio la majuzi zaidi mnamo Jumamosi aliwaalika wanasiasa wote wa Mlima Kenya kwa shindano la gofu. Katika ukurasa wa pili kuna vidokezo pale za Maina Njenga na pia Rais wa kitambo Uhuru Kenyatta. Pale chini hakutakuwa na mvua wa El Nino, hii ni kulingana na Rais. Ruto asema Wakenya wasitarajia El Nino iliyotabiriwa bali mvua kubwa tu. Katika ukurasa wa pili pale mbele, kila mtu ataka chama chake Kenya. Msajili wa vyama vya kisiasa nchini afichua ana maombi ya kusajili vyama 38. Katika masuala ya spoti, Spurs na Fulham leo kitanuka. Tottenham yalenga ushindi wa nyumbani ili kurejea kileleni mwa ligi kuu ya EPL. Kienda pale juu, masuala ya kitaifa, Gaza hofu mapigano yatasambaa. Hii ni baada ya Israel kugeukia Hezbollah huku ikichapa Hamas. Na hapa Kenya, Shakahola, biashara ya viungo yatajwa. Raia wawili Australia wahusishwa na Mackenzie katika ulanguzi wa viungo vya miili ya watu. Hiyo ni katika ukurasa wa 4. Lakini taarifa kuu katika gazeti la Taifa Leo ni Gachagua ajipanga.
Gachagua ajipanga. Okay, let's take a look at the Star this morning, and on the front page of the Star, dialogue standoff over Sabina Chege. Stalemate, Azimio says refusal to remove Sabina as a deputy minority whip shows no goodwill. Minority leader Wandai has accused Kenya Kwanza of declining to address the issue. The story is extensively covered on pages 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. The other big news on the front page of the Star, Raila says he won't be cowed, faults Ruto over Mavoko demolitions. And we have a picture of Raila there with the Kajiado governor, Joseph Olelenku, in one of his tours in Kajiado County yesterday. On the top strip of the Star, transition, Mama Ilado's legacy, discipline, generosity, and pillar of family. And I believe this should be the mother to the editorial director at the Star, Paul Ilado. So our condolences to the Ilado family as well. And that's the front page of the Star this morning.
Let's have a look at the Business Daily. This morning in the headline there, how Israel-Hamas war will hit Kenya. Further fuel prices increase looming as disruptions of trade with Mid-East expected. And away from that, on the Business Daily, NOC sounds out, National Oil Corporation sounds out oil majors for strategic partner deal. And the National Oil Corporation of Kenya has reached out to the top, and that story is on the left strip of the Business Daily this morning. The National Oil Corporation of Kenya has reached out to the top 3 oil multinationals in the country as it steps up efforts to strike a deal with a strategic partner to boost its turnaround plan. And still on the Business Daily, on the right strip of the Business Daily, Mombasa Port set for fresh dredging on the rivalry. And also featured on the Business Daily, Kenya Power starts asset valuation for Ketraco deal. And the KPLC started valuing its transmission line assets ahead of sale and transfer of the Kenya Electricity Transmission Company Limited in line with the Cabinet's order. And Tanzania overtakes Kenya on best investment destinations in the region. And Tanzania has beaten Kenya on the best investment destination for investors eyeing to make deals in the region in the next 2 years. This is according to the findings of a survey conducted by advisory firm KPMG among 150 C-suite level and senior executives in the sub-Saharan Africa. That is what we have on the Business Daily this morning.
From BD to PD, and the front page of People Daily, taking a look at the edible oils. And they say Ruto orders probe into the 6 billion shilling scandal. Cost of edible oil inflated. President directs head of civil service to write to EACC over claims that RCS, a state corporation CEO and a state house official colluded and added $7 per litre for commodity meant to lower cost of living. You can take a look at that full report on page 4. The bottom strip there have a pictorial of Azimio leader Raila Odinga and a church service there. Interdenominational prayers actually in Kajiado town, while among other Azimio leaders. Basically saying Raila hits out at quote-unquote compromised judges, MPs. That story is on page 2. On the left strip there, Rigathi, I am ready to work with rivals, on page 6. On the top strip there, cost of clearing goods to go up as agents raise fees. So on page 15, you will read that the cost of doing business would go up from December 1st after freight agents say increase in fuel prices has made it necessary for them to review the fees. Move is expected to hit motor vehicle importers the hardest. That is on page, the front page of People Daily. And I think that marks the end of the Kenyan papers review.
Okay, even as we cross to the region, we could start with the East African. And on the East African, the big headline on the front page, in SGR race, Xi gives Addis the attention. Ruto's plan slowed by failure by his peers to sign on to the coast-to-coast rail project as China finds Abe more creditworthy and strategic. That story is on page 4 and 5 of the East African today. Other highlights on the bottom strip of the East African. U.S. proposed rules for the Congo mission. Biden pegs resource donation on adoption of regulations against misconduct. Stories on page 6, and we have Ugandan soldiers from the East African Community Regional Force patrolling near one of their bases in Bunagana, DRC. The other story, joy as Uganda, DRC announce a visa waiver plan. The move is expected to open up the two neighbors for more trade and services exchange. Stories on page 3. Let's go to the top strip And just look at some highlights. Banks risk government paper losses as interest rates rise. Kenya bond holders get jitters. And in markets, why NSE trading remains subdued. Big firms control market amid IPO drought. And an opinion there, merci beaucoup, from Ugandans on X. If Marx said religion is opium, in Uganda it is humor. That story is on page 16. And again, Uganda faces huge PR disaster. Killing of British tourist couple dent efforts for recovery. And the magazine, My Life as an Undocumented Individual. That's an East African today, which retails at 100 shillings in Kenya, at 2,000 in Tanzania, 3,000 in Uganda, and 900 Rwandan francs in Kigali. That's East African.
Right, let's cross over to Uganda and the Daily Monitor this morning. The headline there, fight erupt over key global summit preps. And it has emerged that some of the officials charged with preparing the country for the non-aligned movement conference and the G77 plus China summit are pointing fingers at each other over allowances, technical glitches, and concerns over the venue being behind the schedule. A story there is on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Monitor this morning. And looking at the Daily Monitors on the right strip, UPDF enlist locals in fight against ADF rebels. The Uganda People's Defense Forces have turned to ordinary citizens for the intelligence gathering while pursuing the Allied Democratic Forces rebel group in the DR Congo. A story there is on page 7 of the Daily Monitor. And also featured on the Daily Monitor, where your child may struggle to read and write. That piece they are also covered on page 3 of the Daily Monitor. And yes, that is what we have on the Daily Monitor this morning.
Right, from Uganda to Tanzania, the front page of the Citizen, the big story there is inside Tanzania's deal with the DP World. So the government in Dubai's DP World yesterday officially signed a 30-year concession agreement in Dodoma that will see the latter invest over $250 million in upgrading operations at Dar es Salaam port. Other stories making it to the Citizen, how Zanzibar revenue rose 86% in 3 years. So revenue collectors have risen significantly in Zanzibar since President Hussein Ali Mwinyi came into office nearly 3 years ago. Just below that, Indonesia investors to help Tanzania boost palm oil output. And real quick, at the top strip there, resource extraction produces half of all carbon emissions. And there's a pull out there on your health campaign, the quest to cut MTCT in Mara region. That is on the Citizen.
Tuangazie gazeti la Mwananchi na habari kuu pale kwenye jarida la Mwananchi. Tanzania yametimia. Baada ya mjadala mrefu juu ya aina ya ushirikiano, hatimaye mikataba ya uendelezaji wa gati namba 4 hadi 7 za bandari ya Dar es Salaam yasainiwa. TPA DP World waeleza kilichomo, wadau waichambua. Hiyo ndio habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Mwananchi, habari kuu kule Tanzania. Tukisalia kwenye jarida la Mwananchi, habari zingine zilizopewa kipaumbele kule chini kwenye ukurasa wa mbele, ACT CCM wachuana Mtambwe. Kwingineko, Makonda arejea ulingoni kivingine. Na picha pale ya Paul Makonda. Pale juu, vidokezo vingine, Mbowe, lengo letu kuamsha watu kwa ajili ya maendeleo. Dar es Salaam, mwenyekiti wa Chadema Freeman Mbowe amewataka wananchi kujiunga na chama hicho. Na kwingineko, mwongozo waja kupima saratani matiti, shingo ya kizazi kwa wote. Na hizo ndizo habari zilizopewa kipaumbele kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa jarida la Mwananchi kule Tanzania. Turejee nyumbani tuangalie masuala ya karakacha sasa.
Oh yes, and well, this particular morning they're quite interesting caricatures. Can begin with the Limokesi. You have both of them. Which one will you?
We start with the Daily Nation.
Daily Nation,
okay.
yes.
This is a Daily Nation, and It is a caricature that depicts what has been happening in Athi River, the demolitions. We have there's on one side we have a signboard of this land is not for sale, and on the other hand we have this land is for sale, and on top there is a caricature of a vulture signifying the land cartels. And it's just, I see a man there confused in between, I think, should he buy the land or not? And really, it is just a representation of what has been going on and how much we should do due diligence when it comes to purchasing some of these lands, because to avoid such cases that we've seen in Mavoko the last 1 week. Yeah.
Right, and on People Daily, it's always on page 10, something by Stano there. The satire of a gentleman looking like Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua saying, as you can see, I'm very clean. However, quite ironical that there are quite a number of houseflies surrounding the hands that he's washing on. And there's an arrow there saying the shareholder narrative. Probably that is the dirt that he's trying to wash away. Speaks on whole double speak, or, well, him changing and making a U-turn, saying that we are all equal shareholders. That is on, that's what Stano has for us today.
Okay. And on the Standard, this morning, picture there of someone that looks like, okay, someone with a tongue that is associated with the chameleon, and it's a puppet of both this gentleman there, one with a shirt full of oranges and the other one with a head turban, the one that Sikhs use. So yes, that's a cartoon on the Standard, simply trying to say that there's someone who's talking on behalf of two other gentlemen who are in a certain level of agreement.
Oh, yes.
I think this one, for me, I'd go with the cartoon on the Standard today. For anyone who understands what's going on, it speaks to what is happening in Kenya. And yes, we do have the cartoon on the Business Daily today. This one is always complex, but yeah, just like the stories on the Business Daily. I understand frustration. I usually pour it into something I can sell at an art exhibition. Okay, who can interpret that one?
I think one of those days we should have a backside business, Anke and reporter just really breaking it down, some of this business cartoons, yes.
And that sums it up in as far as a look at the dailies today. Quite diverse topics to discuss. And so this morning, for the big discussion on State of the Nation, we'll be having Dr. Justice Juma. He's a party leader, Justice and Freedom Party. Justina Omai makes a comeback on the panel, politician and political analyst. And Josephat Kamanya, political analyst. Do stand by for this discussion. And remember, this morning, we're asking you to share your messages, special messages, as candidates embark on their KCSE exams starting this morning. What message do you have for them? You can continue sending those messages to our social media pages, on X at TV47 News, and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. You're watching Morning Cafe. Let's take a break now. Welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV47 with me, Fred Ndimuli. We want to get down to the discussions on state of the nation, and I'll be introducing my panelists in a short while. But before that, a quick reminder of our top story this morning. Over 900,000 candidates are gearing up for the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education exams, which starts this morning. The assessments will be conducted across a vast network of close to 10,700 examination centers across the country. This morning, candidates will begin their oral language exams in French, German, Arabic, and Kenyan Sign Language, with practicals in music to also be conducted. Now, some of these exams could stretch to Friday this week. NEC conducted rehearsals for the examinations last Thursday, assuring that all operational aspects are in place to facilitate the smooth administration of the national exams. The Examinations Council has engaged 1,700 officers from different organizations to monitor the exercise countrywide. Now, this morning, we're asking you to share your message for this year's KCSE candidates as they sit for their national exams. Your messages of encouragement. Yes, I should point out that. Kindly share your messages of encouragement for this year's KCSE examination candidates as they sit for the national exams. You can do that on our social media pages, on X at TV47 News and on Facebook TV47 Kenya. Let me now introduce my panelists this morning. We do have Justina Omai, a familiar face on this panel, a political analyst and a former presidential running mate in the 2022 presidential campaign. Justina, it's always a pleasure to have you in studio. Karibu
Morning,
sana.
Fred.
Yes, morning. And Justice Kamanya, Josphat Kamanya, political analyst. Karibu sana into studio. And probably let's start off with the KCSE. You know, it is a big deal. And close to 900, actually over 900,000 candidates are sitting for these exams across 10,700 centers countrywide. And we're asking our audiences to share their messages to these candidates. I'm sure you've gone through the same system. So let's start with that, Justina.
I was wondering, do I tell them the truth or let it? But let me encourage them and tell them, however it comes, just know you did your best. Yeah, be encouraged.
Interesting, Josphat.
Yeah, well, it's to wish them all the best. You know, like we used to be told, hard work. Nowadays, I don't see much of the success cards going around.
Yeah.
You know, it was quite a fanfare, you know. But I just want to wish them all the best, and I hope we will remain committed, I mean, as a society, as a community, and treat all the papers, exam papers, like the ballot box papers that never miss. They arrive on time, and everybody receives them. Yeah.
It's something funny you mentioned about the success cards, and yes, it was back in the day. It was big fanfares and the excitement when you receive a success card in school.
Yeah.
It said a lot. This time round, because of the restrictions that were put in school, especially on the third term to curb examination cheating, they're not allowed to receive, in some schools at least, up until after the exam. So it beats the purpose, don't you think, of sending a success card?
Yeah.
But even getting the cards, really, if you didn't read, you didn't read. So.
It was an opportunity for one of your generous uncles to slide in some cash as well.
For snacks. But anyway, I think also the country has evolved, the citizens have evolved, crime has gone high, you know, guys think that the only way to pass the exam is through cheating. So I think you move with the times. If people are bad, you move. You have to curb the badness.
And that issue of exam cheating and the fact that you say it has become a culture, that this generation or a certain generation believes that the only way to the top is through a shortcut, either as a fraudster or through other means of cheating. But what does that say about our society?
Well, you know, it's about values. When social values are ingrained, not just from the school system, but it's about all agents of socialization. You go from the home, from the family setting, from the church setting. If all you find are people who are trying to do things the quickest way possible, we have no regard or respect for the process therein, then as kids, they have no option. If they hear you back at home saying, no, to deal with Justina, you'd rather do this than that, you know. If you want to do this, call this person. So we have in great sort of a quick fix mechanism. And it doesn't always pay, as we have seen now, because remember, we used to have, and Justina can attest to this, a lot of more Kenya students who would do their exams, perform very well, get a certificate with a distinction or credit, but then upon employment, they could not deliver. Mm-hmm. And if you remember very well, that's around the time when people started having disregard for graduates. Yeah. And people also would graduate and they would not get jobs because they're not, really competent. So, which makes me a bit appreciate the CBC system, because now it's not about the grading system. It's about trying to empower you with skills and virtues and ability to conceptualize matters. Mm-hmm. But as a society, we still have a long way to go. Okay. Yeah.
And in a week's time, today KCSE starts, and in a week's time, I think on 30th, that's next Monday, yes, KCPE exams countrywide will be kicking off, and this will be the very last KCPE examination, because after that, the first cohort of the CBC class will be proceeding to grade 8. Okay, let's come back.
Quickly on education.
Yes.
I think I blame education. Our education system is still colonial. Remember when the colonialists came, they wanted to teach Africans just to read the Bible and spread the gospel. Then Africans were like, now we can speak English, teach us something else. Then over time, independence was, it was coming. So Africans were told, you have to go to class so that we can employ you in government. Mm-hmm. So that is the mentality we've always had, that go to school, and then get a job with government or get a job. But how I wish this CBC would focus on, not so much on gaining the skills, you also need the knowledge. Yes. If you're a plumber, you need to know a 3/4 inch, a ½ inch, you need the knowledge first. Number 2, CBC is making children self-conscious. If you look at children today, you ask them, what did teacher say? They really want to tell you, teacher said I'm a good girl. Mm-hmm. And then the teacher will ask the child, did you go to a wedding? Yes, what happened? They are questioning, why are you jumping? They're making kids very self-conscious now. So sometimes you're jumping just to have fun as a kid.
Without a reason.
Without a reason. And then you told you went to a wedding, so enact the wedding. So kids are so self-conscious right now, and I think you're going to have a problem in future. But if our education system is democratized in a way that whether you're talented, whether you know how to sew, whether you're all those things, a musician, it should also focus on just even talent. Not just necessarily what you learn in class, but even other things you do out of class, so that in future, if I'm not good in class, at least I have something else I can back myself up. Yeah.
From education matters, let's now talk about health. And there's what is being branded now as a Ruto Care, which was launched on Friday last week at the Mashujaa Day celebrations in Kericho. It is what is headlining on the front page of the Standard today, but it comes at a cost. Tighten belts as Ruto Care comes at an extra cost. With a new formula for contribution to Medicare starting, employees will have to pay more to realize the president's dream of affordable healthcare for all. The story is extensively covered on pages 2 and 3, and it talks about the 2.75% deduction towards the healthcare plan that was launched. Many people still do not know the nitty-gritty of how this plan will work. What the Standard has done is give a simulation of different pay slips, different amounts of gross pay, and what these deductions will mean. On the front page, gross pay of 90, it means with the new deductions on housing levy and NHIF, or the social health insurance, as it will now be called, which were not there at the beginning of this year. It will mean that it's an additional 2,575 shillings deduction. On page 2, further simulations on pay, 100,000 pay, almost the same amount in deduction if you earn much higher, slightly above 500,000 shillings in gross pay, you will lose about 16,500. And if you go further, and for those earning over 800,000, and this one probably talk about our legislators who earn around that figure, the deductions on their pay slips will go as far as 35,540 shillings more than they were being deducted at the beginning of the year. Now, there are those, and many people will argue when it comes to healthcare, this is probably one of those times when you don't really have to argue with this deduction. They say this could be a necessary increase in what we need to pay as a country. Kamanya, do you agree that probably this Kenyans should not really argue much?
Well, I do agree that we need to revamp our healthcare as a nation. Because if you look around, most of our public health facilities are really in a dire state. And most Kenyans do not subscribe to public health facilities unless on a need basis, unless they cannot afford to go to a private facility, which beats purpose of having an entire health ministry that is fully funded with a lot of resources and personnel, and yet, even have medics, all these medical training centers. But when it comes to the service delivery, it is expensive or even unavailable to most Kenyans. So the only way around it is either to close all the public hospitals and let the private sector take on the service, which is not rational, or now finance it properly. And as a country, I think the president was very clear, and I don't know why we keep forgetting this during the campaigns. And Justina, I'm sure she remembers, he said, we're going to rebuild our country using tax. Taxation was one of the pillars of raising the on-source revenue. So when you see this taxation bracket expanding, is as a result of trying to revamp whatever ministries, services, or the government, or the public policy in general. But the concern is not even the increment on the deduction. The concern is now whether we are going to realize this ideal healthcare service. Mm-hmm. I fear that it has been branded Ruto Care. Because if you do remember, we had Obamacare in the States. And immediately he left office, he left with a package. Because, it was shut down by Trump. I would hate to see now us do all these deduction and try to make the changes that are necessary, and then upon expiry of the presidency, hopefully in 2032, in 9 years, it is now takes a whole turnaround, and Kenyans will have contributed tax. Mm-hmm. So I hope this becomes very institutionalized and captured even in the public service ministry service and commission, and also in the constitution, that anything that is for Kenyans ought not to be individualized, let it be institutionalized. Okay. Because we need hospitals operational. Mm. And we see governors left, right, and center launching the level 3, level 4 hospitals. But Kenyatta Hospital is in a mess.
And the concern is, just as Kamanya has mentioned, that the fact that Kenyans would actually argue that, fine, if at all you can take away the burden of hospital bills from Kenyans, then they would be willing to contribute more. If you can take away the burden of school fees, Kenyans would not really complain about additional taxes. And that is where the rubber meets the road. Are we certain that this will work, given the fact that even after the advent of devolution and health services being devolved to the counties, we are yet to reap the benefits of an improved health system 10 years later?
Actually, the challenge I know the president is going to face is that, remember, people with a pay slip are just 3.1 million. So they are carrying close to 55 million of us who are not in the formal sector. But remember, there are 15.3 million of Kenyans who are able, but then they are not formalized. Mm-hmm. So there's no way we're going to capture their money to say this is going towards healthcare. So he needs to know how the 15.3 million will be part of the tax bracket, because the 3.1 million are not happy about it. They're really saying, you know what, it's like you're punishing us for having a payslip. Needless to say, I've always said Kenya doesn't have a revenue collection problem. It's an issue of spending. There's a video going around showing the motorcade the president was using in Kericho. Mm-hmm. And guys are like, if you're telling Kenyans to tighten the belt, why do you have all these fuel guzzlers on the road? What is the purpose? Try and make us understand, because we have cut so much on our end, but the government is not cutting. So I think even government needs to reorganize how they're spending the revenue collected. Additionally, even when you go to KRA, they're telling you, yeah, if you have an issue with them, they're like, we understand you, but we need to finance the 3 trillion. So I think it goes back to what are our priorities. Are we focusing on the right things? Healthcare is good, but remember, the whole baggage or the whole load is falling on the guys on the pay slip. Sadly to say that NHIF, why it failed is because it was really boosting private sector, private hospitals. Most of you'd see NHIF paying private hospitals a lot of money, but public hospitals are just neglected. I used to pay the 500 shilling one. At first, you were told it was for consultation. Now you used to pay consultation. Even getting your child immunized, you have to pay for it. So it beats the purpose of, again, paying for the cover, but you're not getting the services. So they need to also do public participation. that even Kenyans understand. So what am I getting? Let Kenyans understand, what am I getting out of this? If I'm not in the formal sector, how much am I paying? What are my benefits? Because again, there's discrimination in the NHIF. Employed guys used to pay 1,700 and they're getting better services than someone who's paying 500. So there's so much public participation that is required in all this.
Is there adequate structure? Because even NHIF itself, before this new system was signed into law, at some point got an increase in the amount of contributions through payslips again, and that did not necessarily result in improved healthcare for Kenyans. The fact that the president has come and within 1 year instituted, or rather is looking to transition us from NHIF to another 3 different funds, it may sound good on paper, but are we confident that there are enough structures to ensure that this money is absorbed and spent in a manner? Because it could also result in a political risk for the president, that you collect so much money and then at the end of the day, after 2, 3, 4 years, you have nothing to show for it.
Well, Kenyans don't have faith in the current health system that we have. And I agree, NHIF was almost being called a scam, because people who are on payslip, especially from the government, would access service quickly and with a huge margin of deduction from the medical bill. People who are self-employed and they were paying faithfully, they would face challenges. And then they would start telling you, if the bill is so high, NHIF only covers for, I don't know, your bed, not the meds, you know, and then not these other lab tests. So there was a lot of the lack of clarity or discrimination. Therefore, Kenyans need to know first, and it's a responsibility of the government, even before rolling out this ambitious project, to enlighten all Kenyans so that you know, this will be the deduction, and this will be the services I am to expect. And they shall be provided by these levels of facilities without any discrimination. But currently, Kenyans don't have. That's why people flock the private facilities, where they'll be paying more, but they are sure, if I pay this, I'm getting this service. So we need to have that proper explanation and public participation, not just public participation, but deliberate, informative programs from the government to the public.
Justina, do you think we've had that discussion, a wide enough discussion to ensure that we have a proper structure for this? Because government policies generated through government systems, a few technocrats have not really resulted in the kind of benefit that we are looking for. Do you feel that this discussion has been wide enough to ensure that whatever system they've come up with will benefit the larger society?
I think even the stakeholders involved have not been consulted. Look at the doctors, they're saying, we had a memorandum with the president. He promised us a health service commission. He promised us they're going to hire 12,000 doctors every year. Remember, the issue is that even placement, doctor placement, you'd go to a county like Nairobi, there are like hundreds of gynecologists, but maybe in Garissa, women are having CSs done by just a student. So there's that imbalance of even distribution of the skills. So doctors are saying, you're doing all this, but you're not involving us. So even if the doctors are complaining, who are we? Normal layman people who don't even understand what is happening. I think the president needs also to listen to the doctors, because they're also saying this, they're called the community
health
volunteers.
Yes.
Doctors are saying, okay, having them is okay, but really, even if they tell you go to the health center, who is there to take care of you? There are no doctors. Additionally, like where I live, we don't have that government health center. We don't have it. So even when the government is telling us that we're going to collect funds to build the facilities, we know what happened. So I think, in short, the ambition, the vision is clear, the vision is good. But I think if the president doesn't do much, he's going to be considered just as the populist guy we see. He makes declarations, but there's no action, there's no impact on the ground.
Okay.
And we may want to ask ourselves, is it about time we fully devolve the health sector? Perhaps that might be the way to go, like fully devolve it to the level that the national government has very little, almost no input, then the county governments can take it over, because then the service goes closer to the people and there might be proper follow-up on funds and resources, implementation of the programs that we need. Because what is needed in Garissa is not necessarily what is needed here, perhaps in Kiambu or Nyandarua or any other county. But you see, when these national outfits are rolled out, Like we saw the other day, the CHVs, they were here in Nairobi. But what happens to the Turkana CHVs where it's a war zone, in a manner of speaking? There are hardships in terms of weather and accessibility, and even the road infrastructure. Those people need specialized training. So a CHV in a slum here in Nairobi, the requirement is very different from those that are up country. If you go to Kilifi and the interior part of that, where even the illnesses or the reported cases at the grassroots, at the homestead level, will be totally different. Okay. So we need to streamline this and be very deliberate, because again, the more we save or invest on preventive care, the more we save on curative care.
Okay. Yeah. Universal health coverage, it was launched by the president on Mashujadi, that's last Friday, in Kericho. And that's what we're talking about this morning, or rather, we've just been talking about. The headline on the front page of the Standard talks about tightening our belts with increased deductions on pay slips to go towards funding this new national health insurance system. Time now for a break. We will continue with this discussion and the politics, including what's happening with the partisan talks and political parties after the break. You're watching Morning Cafe. Before we take a look at what's happening with the bipartisan talks, there's a story on page 9 of the Standard, and it has to do with political parties. And a former MP is accusing the ORPP of failing to ensure party order. It is one of those things that is also being discussed by the National Dialogue Committee, political party hygiene, and the fact that Azimio are trying to push for political parties not to be interfered with. So this former nominated MP has taken the office of the Registrar of Political Parties to court over claims of allowing some political parties to exist without meeting laid down requirements. And he argues that political hygiene begins with organized political vehicles. There's a requirement here, and this gentleman is from the United Democratic Forum, one of the parties that folded to form Jubilee, and he says the ORPP has failed to validate a significant threshold that political parties must meet to receive funding. This entails having no less than 1,000 registered voters from more than half of the 47 counties. Now, political party funding is huge, and this is taxpayers funding these vehicles. Yet we've seen time and again that political parties are personal property for many people, used specifically as election vehicles, and after that, and I can see one of his claims is that some of these parties are usually open during elections and the offices close. And I want to ask a party that presented a presidential candidate last year, a Roots Party, are the offices still open?
I left the party, and I think the former MP is very right. Political parties are personal properties. Remember, if you say something, someone will tell you, "Hii ni chama yangu, what are you trying to tell me?" So there is need for this political hygiene, and there is need also for Kenyans to see political parties as part of their everyday life. The sad reality is that Kenyans see politicians as, what do you call it? Cow. The one that are milking, you
Cash
see,
cow.
cash cow.
Yeah.
You know, Kenyans think as long as you're a politician, you have money. So politicians end up investing so much in a political party, and then they see it like, this is my personal business. I need return on investment. So the moment Kenyans own political parties, they do fundraising, and they own it in terms of, you know, this is our process, these are our candidates, these are our systems and policies. I think it will make much sense. In fact, the ORPP during the national dialogue at BAMBA, she was suggesting that the way even we should look at funding, it should not just singly be from the taxpayers' money, it should also be for political parties. What you fundraised, the government will match the same. So that at least there's some ownership, as opposed to guys feeling, no, we are entitled. What are you putting on the table? Number two, she was also making a proposal that made a lot of sense. She was saying, because at times there's the issue of party agents. People say, yeah, we had party agents, they were compromised. Other party agents say they were never paid. You've always seen those issues. Why not have a political party get their own party agents? They are trained by ORPP, who does the training. Up to now, she does training, the office does training, but they are paid by IEBC from the exchequer's money. That is part of the political party's funds. So that at least, even if you're not a very large political party, but you have the ideology, you have the vision, you're not going to be pulled back by the fact that you don't have money to pay agents at the end of it all. So I think if these recommendations are put into consideration by the bipartisan talks team, a lot will be taken care of.
But this signals a level of frustration. If at all we're taking the ORPP to court, seeking political hygiene, it should come automatically. But there's something Justina mentioned about ownership of political parties. And if we were to be honest, just as we said, political parties appear to be more like personal property than anything else. Ownership of political parties can only come through registration of members and grassroots elections. Most of these parties have never done that. UDA is now talking of its intention to attempt these grassroots elections this December, and that is already causing cracks within the formation as it is. Do you think UDA will be able to do this?
Yeah, I believe UDA will do its best, because remember, UDA is trying to position itself as a party of the future, a more progressive, modernized political party. And we can see signs of that trying to take hold. However, it's not going to be easy. And the reason you see all this ruffling of feathers around political parties is because the more you're involved in a party, the closer you are to a party leader, the higher the chances of you getting a ticket when it comes to the election time. And therefore, a lot of Kenyans tend to flock the party that is potentially going to be bigger and with a potential presidential winner. That's why you've always seen ODM has always thrived, and then there was Jubilee, then now we have UDA, stuff like that. But the challenge that we face as Kenyans is that we do a disservice to our own self. We have not yet appreciated that political parties are the ones that form the government. So people don't care. Right now, ask somebody, which party do you belong to? Me, I was in UDA, ODM, yada, yada, and I voted. That's it now.
Do you see that as a challenge even for UDA as it looks to conduct grassroots elections, that people at the grassroots level simply do not care about membership to political parties anymore?
Especially now, because there's around this time, there's a bit of apathy when it comes to politics. People don't care which party. People are more concerned about the cost of living. So, and you will see, it's the politicos, people who are still in the political scene, who will try to capture these positions with the intention of being candidates come 2027. So it beats the purpose, because I would imagine we need to do a lot of grassroots mobilization. Actually, I think the ORPP ought to come out strongly now and start enlightening civic education, enlightening Kenyans or the essence of a political party and why you should belong to a political party. Then, before we even go to the grassroots mobilization for all political parties need to be taken to task. For every Kenyan to know this party leans more to socialism, communism, democracy.
Those discussions, we rarely have them.
We rarely do, and that's why you see there is all this confusion. Mm-hmm. You end up now even sending people to parliament who don't believe, who believed in something totally different from what you'd have aspired to see as a person who is being represented by this legislature. So there's a lot of civic education that is lacking. And I think this political parties fund, or the funding therein, ought first to be diverted to civic education. Mm-hmm. Because if we have a strong ORPP office, and then we have a strong IEBC, chances of political party hygiene, chances of electoral justice, chances of political decency will be very high. Because those are the two main organs that either make or break the political fiber during the campaigns.
And the discussion about political hygiene is also before the National Dialogue Committee, meaning it is a discussion that we as a country feel probably it is about time we have it. We have a history of parties or even coalitions not lasting even 2 election cycles. After one election, that's it. NASA, CORD. Now we have Azimio. Jubilee, at least you can see it's going down after being a behemoth. You wonder, is there really a possibility of democracy within political parties? Because we saw ODM about 10 years back try to conduct grassroots elections. And we saw what happened at Kasarani. And that was the only attempt at this kind of what UDA is trying to do. Before that, KANU, and we remember about Chama cha KANU, and everyone had that card, the red one, and Chama ni Mama na Baba. And the president, the party leader, knew even the KANU branch chairman in far-flung places. Is it possible to go back to that, ever?
I think it is, but we also, it goes back to the funding I was saying. Remember the MP saying that, the former MP saying that offices are closed soon after elections. Of course, you cannot be able to sustain an office. You need to pay rent, you need to pay the guys who are there. So maybe this funding should go back. We could borrow from Germany. Germany have close to over 200 political parties, we know. But the government funds those political parties. They fund an ideology. Are you guys economic, environmental? And even these days, the communism and whatever is no longer, it's a 20th century ideology. Now guys are focusing on single issue ideologies. Are we teachers? What is our ideology? Education reforms. Are we in the media? What is our ideology? Transparency in how you set the agenda. So I think government also, in as much as we want them to fund political parties, they also need to fund from the back end, not from the front that you got 5% of the votes. How did you get to the 5%? What were the systems? So that Kenyans can see the seriousness. I remember when I was young, there was a KANU office at the stage where I grew up. So KANU, maybe we can say the age it had more years, it had more experience and more resources. But now these political parties are getting money. What are they doing with the money? Maybe the money is being shared amongst the guys who invested. So if we're investing in democracy, which is very expensive, we need to fund that. And let me also say that the issue of NASA, CORD, they've always had these political parties. I think one thing we lack in this country is that if you're vying for a seat, you have to have a conversation with the political party. Of course, the party will tell you this is my stand, but they need to even give you, like in your file, they give you a point where you write things you can vote with your conscience. You know, someone might say, fine, we were in Azimio, but I don't stand for violence and maandamano. That is personal. You cannot force people to say, even if the party stand is good for maandamano, but my conscience does not allow. So you'll not judge anyone in terms of, yeah, you didn't go for maandamano and you're part of Azimio. You're going to judge someone, then someone is going to say, I told you what I can vote on my conscience. Even abortion, even, you know, family planning, those are things, those are personal decisions. So in as much as there's a party stand, there need to have leeway that this, after the election, the president who comes in, I'm going to work with this president because I want to build the nation. So some issues, they need to be leeway for you to vote with your conscience.
Okay, and looking at the coalitions we have currently,
Yeah.
if at all there's a congress or a convergence of ideologies in any of these political parties, then what's the point of having a coalition beyond one election cycle? If at all ANC and UDM and this other TSP and the other parties within Kenya Kwanza coalition, even beyond the 2022 election, are still in agreement with the UDA, larger UDA ideology, then what's the point of having a coalition with smaller parties? Why don't they just dissolve and merge and form one big party? And that's a debate that's quite alive within the Kenya Kwanza coalition.
You know, there is a political expediency of the political party leaders, remember. And some of them do feel, the way I read it, that if they do join one party, they become now, they are under the party leadership of the one that they have joined. And they don't want to run that risk, that is one. Two, remember, our coalitions have always been election-based. It's not on ideologies, and that's what we are saying we need to go, we need to move towards ideological convergence or congruence of ideas. But when they are still based on winning an election, and mostly ousting out one person and letting the other one come in, you know, the relationship just dies because it's quite short-lived, and it was very intentional, it was very defined. We are going this side because you don't want this side to win. And then after we win, then that's it. And you have seen there has been a fallout all the way back since the times of NAC and the NAC coalition. There has always been a fallout of party leaders immediately after the election. Because some will come out and say, I was shortchanged. This is not what I expected. They are being sidelined, you know. So we need to even borrow from what I have seen as a very rapid developing political parties, especially on the continent. If you look at the CCM, the Tanzanian party, for a long time, they've been able to do their grassroots mobilization. If you look at the EFF down in South Africa, they are really coming up and coming up strong. And you can see the kind of work they're investing in civic education and public involvement. And everybody knows, especially now in South Africa, what EFF stands for. Economic freedom. And they tabulate that very well. So you will be knowing, even as a party leader from a small party, I'm coalescing with the EFF because I believe in this. This is what they stand for. It is economic liberation, it is environmental movement, it is a human rights movement. But in Kenya right now, if I asked, like you've mentioned TSP, what does TSP stand for? You know, UDM, and any other party you can pick, apart from even ODM, what does ODM stand for? We don't know.
A fruit became a party, and that was it.
So these are the things we need. If we are really honest and deliberate about transforming our political platform and terrain, it is about time as Kenyans we start demanding from these political party leaders, you want me to be a member of your party, what do you stand for? So that when I say I'm a member of UDA, this is what we stand for. When she says she's a member of Jubilee, this is what Jubilee stands for. Because we are assassinating our political parties. Immediately they form government. From the times of the late President Kibaki, NAC did not survive. Jubilee Party is gone.
PNU left immediately.
Immediately. Now here we are with the Azimio coalition, and already you can see nobody wants to close shop. Because again, we said it's almost a private entity. The funding makes them to remain active. If I know if I close my party, I lose the political party funding.
It's about the money.
It's about the money.
Yet it's also an opportunity, the kind of process that UDA is looking to undertake in December. It could be an opportunity for groups that are considered vulnerable politically, the youth and the women, to ensure that they own a stake in these parties through grassroots elections, grassroots mobilization. Women, for example, And we've seen quite a number of women, whatever they get in terms of leadership is given to them as piecemeal, almost affirmative action. And women have not really been able to own this so-called boys' club forums. Because a case in point, the governor of Meru, Kawira Mwangaza, was facing impeachment. She was an independent candidate. Don't you think that probably, if at all she was a member and a staunch member of one political party, that the kind of fights she's having in Meru would not be happening?
First, let me say that I've always supported women. But when I look at her argument, because she's always said that there are people who are uncomfortable with the leadership of Mama, I want to tell her that that argument is very old. It is as old as when Grace Onyango went to parliament in 1969. The time those people in Kisumu town voted for Grace Onyango to go to parliament, they knew that women are capable. So first she needs to really decide what she wants, because now she's really fighting everyone. You cannot go for the first impeachment, you survive, and then the second impeachment, you're still saying guys are after you. And I support women. However, if she was in a political party, she would be controlled by some limits. You know, this party, we don't do this party, we agree, we are doing this is our PR. But you know, now she's not controlled, she's doing things her own way. Unfortunately, she's rubbing people the wrong way. In fact, I want to encourage Kenyans that we need to move away from this idea of running as an independent. Because even when you go into parliament, sometimes even your vote doesn't have a voice. So it's better to coalesce in a political party that you believe in, so that when you say something, they say, as a party, this was our stand. But as an independent, you're going to be beaten up, you're going to have issues with everyone. And maybe what you believe is not what they believe. So I think it's not, for my seat, it's not an issue of Governor Nimama. It is how she is relating with other people. And let me add that when you mentioned Danak, I remember in 2002 Kibaki had a political party. But come 2007, he never had a political party. So that is when they ran to have the PNU. So what are we saying? Political parties need to move away from this tyranny of numbers. We are coalescing because of the tribe, because of... No, let's focus on the issues. And I always tell politicians, Kenyans have moved on. They have left us behind. So if 8 million Kenyans say they're not going to vote because they couldn't relate to either of the people who are on the ballot, then I think that is opportunity for them to ask them, why didn't you relate with us? So that we move and in fact catch up with Kenyans. If better, we move ahead of them so that they follow us. But as it is, we are still stuck in the 20th century. Yes.
For Kawira Mwangaza's case, do you think she would have enjoyed some level of protection if at all she belonged to a strong party, as opposed to now having no representation in the county assembly?
Well, I don't believe Governor Kawira is having challenges because she's a woman. No. We need to stop playing that gender card. Because right next to her, we have Governor Sisley of Embu. And then the other side, we have Governor Waiguru, Kirinyaga. So we need to stop playing that gender card. Two, I also don't believe she's having issues because she belongs to the independent part of the political fiber. I think there has been a failure in the Meru County Assembly of establishing a working relationship. Because after election, everybody should know now you're in office to serve the people. It is upon you as the governor to have a functional county assembly. It is upon you as the county assembly members, the MCAs, to be in a working relationship with the governor and then serve the people of your county. Whether there is outside influence, as she purports, or whether the MCAs are trying to raise non-issues, the fact is there is discord. The fact is they are not able to work together. And I pity the people of Meru. It is an area I'm very conversant with. They're in dire need of service delivery. And if they continue playing politics like this, in the next 3 years, they'll not receive any substantive development. And remember, we had a similar case in Embu, Governor Wambora. He survived 10 years, and I think every 2 years he was getting impeached. Every 10 years he was getting impeached. And nothing significant came out of that for the Embu people. Therefore, Governor Kawira needs to decide what she wants to do for the people of Meru, and the MCAs also need to decide. What I see as a challenge there was this insinuation that there is going to be what we call the Ward Development Fund. And MCAs are across the country, they keep agitating for that to be implemented so they can have a budget. The conflict is some governors who are not in very good personal relations with the MCAs, they have strictly followed the law to the letter. Because MCAs have no funds, they have no projects to run. It's they represent, they legislate, and they oversight, period. The governor launches all the projects. It is only fair, an act of professionalism for the governor to inform you as an MCA, I'm coming to your ward to launch this project. But the governor doesn't really need the MCA per se, because he has a ward administrator, he has a sub-county administrator, he has a whole system, structure that he can work with even in absence of the MCA, because even when the MCAs come, they're just there for public relation. So it is in the wisdom of the leadership of each and every county to find a working relationship with the people that are in office, because those are the people who are elected, the MCAs, and you as the governor, irregardless of the party. In Nairobi, we have a governor who was elected on the UDA ticket, but the majority of the MCAs are from the Azimio coalition. But there is not much noise. Why? Because in their own way, in their own wisdom, in their own political professionalism, they have tried to establish a working relationship and serve the people of Nairobi. Meru ought to replicate that.
But definitely, surely there would be something to benefit from belonging to UDA, for example, for Kawira Mwangaza, given the fact that majority of the MCAs belong to that party there. It would be easier even through the party to whip up the members, and because we've seen attempts by the deputy president to call these people together, but you're calling your own MCAs who belong to your party and asking them to defend an independent governor. Definitely there is some disconnect there. Do you agree that there's something to be gained by belonging to a party, for a governor especially?
There is something to be gained. I remember these MCAs, they are those code of ethics governing a political party. There are those PR things we see. Even when you listen to a UDA person here on TV and the other one is on the next TV, they speak the same language. I think they're scripted. So if you're part of that political party, there is a way you do things. So she would be controlled in a way to do things according to the political party way. But sadly, she's alone. She's alone. And I don't know how many MCAs are independent. And remember, as an independent, you're not forced to support her. Yes. I mean, she had her own way. You have your own way. So I think being in a political party is very, very beneficial. There's something Josephat said about Ward Development Fund. Fred, I think these fundings are the problems, are the cause of our problems in this country. Sometimes you'll never see an MP in Bunge, but guys are saying Eco Ground, doing what? Giving blankets, launching what? Things that are not adding value. Remember, the control of budget is saying we do not have money. How I wish they were in Bunge articulating legislations and policies that are going to open up Kenya to receive more in terms of revenue, in terms of taxation, to widen the tax net, like I spoke before, in terms of health. 3.1 million guys are carrying the burden of 55 million Kenyans. Those are the things we want them to do because the Constitution requires them to legislate, represent, and oversight. So many of them say, I'm not in Bunge, but I'm on the ground. Many of them say in the committees, they do not even attend committees. They're saying they're on the ground. So do we really need this funding? I don't think so. And it also goes back to what Kenyans expect of their leaders. You want just to be given blankets, to be given unga, or you want your leader to come up with policies that make life easier for you to run a business. It's not a must for you to be employed. Right now, guys, in business, we are complaining, we are crying. It's not easy for us. What is this policy they have taken to the National Assembly for us to say, okay, fine, fuel is expensive, landing costs are high, fine, but can we lower the taxes on fuel? I wish they were doing such things, but now people say, no, mimi, bora niko ground. Doing what? One day when this country will not have the finances to fund the CDF, so how are you going to realize that my MP is on the ground? So I think even this funding is not making sense at all. Huh? Yet
the argument is that the law is here to serve us, not us to serve the law. So if at all the understanding by the Kenyan electorate is that this ward representative should be overseeing and implementing projects at the ward level, and the member of the National Assembly should be doing the same at the constituency level, then isn't the conversation that we should be having is adjusting our laws to broaden the role of these leaders so that even the issue of CDF and the Ward Development Fund are no longer an issue? Because if at all it's going to undermine even devolution that we have fought so much to implement, don't you think that it's just time to flip the coin and think out of the box?
Let's understand the genesis of this governor-MCA conflict. The first set of governors who came into office about 10 years ago, because they did not have the experience of running a county government, they utilized every possible asset at their disposal. And one of that, or rather one of those, was an MCA, who was the local representative. And that's why you'd see MCAs there launching Maram roads, hospital being open, and all those projects the governors were undertaking. But that was in good faith from the governors. Then it became a culture. Then it became an expectation of the MCAs and now the members that they do represent from the ward level. So there is no conflict on paper. Functions of an MCA are very clear. Functions of an MP are very clear, and those of a governor. An MCA has no budget. An MCA has no projects to launch. Their work is at the assembly.
But should the law defy our culture? If at all we believe that the MCA should be launching roads in our area, why should the law say different? Isn't it time to relook at those laws?
I do agree. We need to review, because remember, even there is a conversation that I was almost being shut down now on whether we need the position of the MCA, on whether we need the position of the women representative. You know, what are the clear impact that we can come out and say in the last 10 years since we devolved this new structure and this new, constitutional dispensation, what are the benefits of these parties? I agree, we need to review, and we also need to agree where the funding, the Ward Development Fund, the CDF, because if you take away the CDF from the MP, they have no budget, they have nothing else to do, they become like an MCA. Also the position of the senator. The Senate has no budget. The senator of any county in this country has no budget, has no projects to launch, because their work is like, is now an inflated position of an MCA actually. And that is how an MCA should be operating. No budget, just oversight, represent, and legislate. So the conflict is not on paper. The conflict is on understanding. And remember, other governors have been very empowering and embracing their MCAs. So when they compare, like now if you look at Murang'a, there is that Ward Development Fund. I think they got 5 million each. Then the Kiambu MCAs will say, why is this one not coming through? Then the Meru MCAs will be saying, we are being punished because this government does not even belong to our party. But those are roadside politics. We also need to respect the choice of Kenyans. Case in point, Governor Kawira was elected, and there was, remember, there was a UDA candidate for governor, for the gubernatorial position, whom the Meru people rejected. And other parties as well. I think, what do you call him, the Kingangi, yes, the Bas, also they had a candidate. But the Meru people made a choice. So we have to start respecting the voice of the people. Because at the end of the day, the minority always have their say, the majority have their way.
It is the same people who elected Kawira Mwangaza who believe the MCAs there should be developing or launching projects at the ward level. They understand what they need. Isn't that the conversation we should be having? Because even the CDF, according to the Supreme Court, it's unconstitutional. Yeah. But people believe that the member of parliament has to do this, and if he doesn't, then he's not doing his job. The Kenyan is very clear that these are the roles I want. They probably are in tweets saying that this is an indictment on some of the laws and provisions of our constitution, that oversight, representation, and legislation are not enough for what we've done in electing this member. We need him to do something more.
What I think is the conversation we should be having is, are these funds really having an impact on the ground? If bursaries given by MPs had an impact, then Fred, people will not be sending you messages that they are not able to pay school fees. Yet you are told Ministry of Education has a funding, then the MP has a bursary, the governor has a bursary, some places the MC has a bursary. Is that money sufficient? I wish we consolidated that money and said now, from the ministry's perspective, when you tell us that one child, the capitation of one child is 20,000, we do not want to see children walking around or people fundraising for education, because now we have consolidated the funds. But sadly, this money is used for political mileage. People who get bursaries at times are friends of the politicians. People who don't even need the money. That is why you see Kenyans are everywhere saying, oh, I need school fees. If at all this money had impact, then we'd not be having this conversation. Sadly, even many of these people who go to schools are going to schools through Harambee. Yet we are told that every child by the ministry is supposed to get, I don't know, 8,000 shillings. I wish we could consolidate all these funds, even if it is roads. Let Ministry of Roads, and we say, if we see a pothole, it is you guys. But now everyone wants to do something to be seen on the ground, forgetting that where the money is coming from, there is need for policy. There is need for us to focus on manufacturing. There is need for us to say, okay, fuel is expensive. Can we go green? There is this Dandora dam site. We could use it, we could do something, you know, the green, harness energy out of it. But now we have people who are saying, I'm going to Bunge to just focus on giving blankets. I mean, it takes us back, not even to the 20th century, it takes us back to the 19th century. The policies we need in this country are 21st century ideologies, things that are making us move in the right direction. So when we are all left to say that the MP had to pay blankets, and then how is that helping my life? How is that helping the future and interest of this country?
Yet that is a conversation we're having at the National Dialogue Committee, that there is already an agreement. The president himself is the one who came up with this proposal to entrench NGCDF in the Constitution. And if at all you do that, yet the role of the National Assembly is clear. Even the MCA will argue, fine, if you can do it at the national level, you can also do it at the county level.
Yeah, and you know, it's a gray area. And I think we need to have that deliberate conversation. First of all, I want to agree how I look forward to us collapsing all this bursary dispensation and offering Kenyans free quality education. Because the governor gives bursary, the MP gives, the MCA gives, and then you hear also the government will do some sort of subsidy. Why can't we just do costing of proper education? And we know this is the cost of and this is the much we need. Then from the national government and the county government, we put that in the structure such that all you have to do as a child is go to school. You have seen primary school kids being asked to come with money for printing, do photocopy, bring this. Away now from all these additional CBC costs, you know, you need to revise, you need to bring, I don't know, copies of your past paper and all that, which is a cost that continues to grow every day. So we have to now go back into policy formulation before we even get to the programs and the details. What do you want to have as Kenyans? Do you want free education? Yes, we demand that from the government. The government becomes very accountable and deliberate and purposeful. And they give us a plan so that even as we talk about tax deduction, we know if I'm paying 1,000 extra in form of tax, but the education is free, I've just paid for it in advance. The same now applies to now when it comes to all these governors and MCAs. We need to know, let's now walk away from pleasing the MCAs. Let people know this is the role of an MCA. Even when you vie or as you vie, this is what you'll be expected to do. Because MCAs claim that if I'm not involved by the governor in the project, then he's killing my political base. You know, I'm losing my grip.
Question, is the president wrong in proposing the entrenchment of NGCDF, because even that is unconstitutional?
Well, I would want to have it reviewed because I hold a different opinion. MPs, most of the MPs, like she says, you rarely hear them in parliament, you know, pushing for policies, pushing for legislation. You don't see them even out in the media saying that we feel the government needs to calibrate or regularize this and that. But all they latch on is a dispensation of the bursaries, construction of police stations, and I mean, basically that's about, and a few roads here and there. But if you take away that kitty, which I have no, I appreciate the impact we have had at the community level, because MPs now have been able to reconstruct or renovate schools and put up police stations and all that. But I think it ought not to be in the Constitution. let's not be devolving this devolved function selectively. Let's not try to save political careers of some members of parliament by having them as a sustainable mechanism. Because if you have this kitty, now you'll be able to do your run around and see the people and mingle with the people, and then you put up a face. I think we need to go back to what is the policy, what is the informative, the informing principle on why we want to have it in the Constitution.
Okay. I think the president is very wrong. And I always tell Kenyans, the president is a very good politician. He knows politics, but delivery hapo anaanguka kidogo. So I think he's wrong because he's not moving us to the angle of accountability from the national government. Look at even the funding, the GAF, the National for the Women. We were here when there was a report that the pads that are being given to girls are causing infections because they are not of the right quality. Now remember, this woman rep is buying here, this woman, so there is no standard way of knowing where you bought these pads from, and maybe you're buying cheaply so that you have more that are not helping these girls. In fact, they're causing infections to them. So I think we need to move away from now this money to now legislation itself. Remember, there's a senator who was suspended, and she came out and told Kenyans that in committees, you'll never see MPs. And if they're in committees, they're there soliciting for funds. They're saying, if you're passing this thing, yangu ni ngapi. And that is why you have maximum impact as a politician to change, to make change. Additionally, there is this trend in the National Assembly, which again is colonial in my view, that when you stand to talk, you say, I'm a ranking member, so I've been in parliament for 20 years. To do what? If you have been there for 20 years, what is the impact that you've brought? If you've been so good, step out and come and enjoy the policies you've made, or graduate to the next level of leadership. You can't tell us you've been here for 20 years, yet you cannot even go from class 8 to Form 1 because you're just curtailed there. Those are the people who are even making new brains to just give up and say, me, just eat my salary and move on. So I think we should even be talking about this legislative arm. How are you benefiting Kenyans? You guys are so many, they are 300 and what? Remember, they say that the first hour is for the senior members to say what they're saying. Some of them do not even know what they're saying. They have no vision, they have no agenda. So someone who comes in with an idea will always be told, the second hour is for you. So I think he's wrong in the funding model. We need to know that with the dilapidated economy that they inherited, we should consolidate all our funds, whether it is healthcare, whether it is what. But we need to move Kenyans from the angle of expecting welfare to an angle where Kenyans are saying, I'm paying for this, so I expect this service delivery. Okay.
Now that we're already talking about the National Dialogue Committee, the initial 60 days that they had been given to expire this week on the 26th, I think that was on Thursday, coming Thursday. They've already been given 30 more days, and since yesterday they retreated to Nakuru to consider the submissions and memoranda that various members of the public and other stakeholders presented to the group at the Bomas of Kenya. And questions about whether or not they're taking too long arise. Issues to do with whether or not these talks will be consequential have come up. A case in point, the issue of the reconstitution of the IEBC, which they say that they've already agreed on. We are looking at the possibility of failing to meet the deadline for boundaries and the delimitation of boundaries in March next year. It will be the first time that we are defying this. We've never done this before. So the consequences we are yet to experience, we still do not know. But there's no sense of urgency in doing anything, it would appear. That if they say they've already agreed on the reconstitution of IEBC, why don't you go ahead and do it then? We have to wait for another 60 days, another 30 days for them to present a report. Do you think that we're just taking too long and spending too much time talking about issues that you should already have agreed on?
I think expectation is what is frustrating Kenyans. The essence of the bilateral talks was to find electoral justice, remember. So we can move from the streets and go to boardroom and try to harness our differences. Now as the Kenya Kwanza and then the Azimio side. And there were concerns that Azimio was trying to use now the bilateral talks as a backroute to government. And you know, we've had even the Right Honorable Prime Minister says, I don't want to speak now because I don't want to jeopardize the outcome or the process of the talks. Thus, it is a political process. because the first agenda that should have been agreed upon, and I'm kind of relieved to hear them say they've come to a conclusion, is a reconstitution of the IEBC. Because the reason we started having these talks is as a result of having doubts or questions towards the IEBC management of just the concluded election. And then there are these other subsequent issues. So I'm glad to see them say they have agreed on IEBC. We don't know how yet, but we're just waiting for the details, as you say, to see how that will come out and how it will be implemented. Taking too long, there's nothing that is going to come out of this beyond just lowering down the political temperatures. That was the intention, it has been achieved, and we are done with that process. There will not be reconstitution of government. Nothing will come out of these bilateral talks that will accommodate the Azimio, or rather the opposition in government. Formation of the leader of opposition office and having them run an office, I don't see that seeing the light of the day. Because the other day I was questioning, when you do that, does he get to come to parliament? When he does, what happens to the leader of minority, like Opiyo Ndanywa? What would now be his role when the Right Honorable Prime Minister is there as the lead of the opposition? What happens to his deputy, Kalonzo Musyoka or Martha Karua, when this office of the leader of opposition is formed? And who will be funding it? And do you want to run a shadow government? Because the more you empower the opposition, the more you're creating a shadow government as a sitting president. I don't see that seeing the light of the day. I don't see value in having that office, honestly speaking. Okay. I think we should have to respect the process that we have embraced as a country, that we vote, the winner wins, the loser loses. Okay. Then we wait for the next process. But for the talks, cost of living has not been addressed, which is then the next thing after IEBC. It should be cost of living, just those two things, then they should just come back home.
Just the issue now should probably move from the main agenda to prioritization, because some of these discussions we're having about changing even the governance system, yes, there are possible discussions to have, but could take too long to implement. Probably some of them may require a referendum, which will not happen anytime soon. But we've included other agenda there that could be that in themselves demand some sense of urgency. The reconstitution of the IEBC, which without that commission in place, the boundaries, delimitation and review cannot happen. Hence will be defying the constitution. Cost of living is something that is urgent for now. Are we not taking too long to discuss other issues, which probably those talks could still proceed to whichever conclusion, but probably prioritize some things that need more urgency instead of asking for 30 more days?
Kwanza, I always wonder, who tells government people that to brainstorm or to conclude the work you have to go out of town? It shows that how they're out of touch with reality. The ordinary Kenyan cannot even afford to walk to somewhere else because of an insecurity. What's even taking a car, even walking, the insecurity is very high. So I think they're out of touch with reality. We've not had even proposals on the cost of living from their angle. They are just there. Kalonzo is telling us, people are saying we are spending money here and there's no money we have gotten. They are forgetting that from where we sit, the 8 million Kenyans who never voted have seen through their eyes and they know what they're doing. They're just creating jobs for other people. They just want to linger around so that whatever benefit they're getting, that you're seen to wake up and go somewhere. And that is why I always tell politicians, don't perform in a way that the day you're not in power, you're sure you're going to wake up and you're going to be doing your life out of government. But not all these people are so bored. They are like, gosh, I'm out here. There's nothing I'm doing. I need to wake up. Waziri Eugene was at a CS the other time. No, he has no specific thing that he's doing. So he has to be seen that, yeah, I'm on the ground. I'm being seen on TV. But they're forgetting to remember that the ordinary Kenyan is feeling the heat. The ordinary Kenyan is asking, what are you guys doing at Bomas? If you look at even comments, Kenyans are saying, turudi kwa streets. What does that say? It says that Kenyans are not, we have nothing to lose. We have no education to lose. We have no job to lose. We have no property to lose. Kenyans are so desperate. They're thinking, let's just finish this country and move on. But they are not really addressing the issues. And I think the reason they're taking so long is because there's someone who's getting some money here and there. They are given fuel. They're traveling around. They have something to speak on TV. But they should remember that the ordinary mwananchi are saying, you guys, you're no longer making sense to us. The life has become very difficult. It's not easy. So they need to know whatever they're doing at Bomas and now in Nakuru is not relating with the ordinary Kenyan.
Yet enough Kenyans showed up and presented their ideas, submissions and memoranda, and that is what they're going to consider there. Most of those ideas and proposals had to do with a review of the Constitution, change this law here, increase representation, reduce the number of those people representing us, and so on and so forth. Definitely a conversation that we need to have. It is 13 years since we promulgated the Constitution. We've not had any successful opportunity to amend it. It could be a possible gateway towards changing a few things that we feel are uncomfortable for us as Kenyans. As we said, even on that word fund, there are things that Kenyans feel, the law may say this, but we feel different.
But yeah, it could be a gateway to a lot of good. Because if it takes the direction of facilitating sort of a national dialogue, then that is okay. Even the extension of the duration, that would still be fine. Because as Kenyans, I believe no Kenyan want to go back to the streets. None. The Kenyans I know, nobody is interested in going back to the streets. Everybody has agreed we have a government, now we want service delivery and we want the cost of living to go down. But back to the issue of could there be any good that can come out of this? And now hopefully they get to review all these issues that are being represented by different, remember we had the NGOs, the unions and all that, the MP who was agitating for extension of the presidential term. All these issues need to be listened to. And I agree, we are now having a first instance of reviewing our constitution, the boundary review and all that. But are we going to achieve it? Perhaps maybe not on time, because remember it's March next year, so we're just shy of 150 days. I don't think we are going to do it on time, but it should be very urgent, because representation should also inform taxation. Those are the two things we need to balance. And the reason you hear there's been this conversation of one man, one vote, 1 shilling is because taxation without representation is unconstitutional. Actually, it should now be a crime. It is an injustice from the government. So those are things we need to review. I do agree. The boundary review, the delimitation and all that, we need to look into that and see how best can Kenyans access service through representation. What do we need to strike out? Do we still need the Senate? Do we need the MCAs? Do we need the women rep? And all those other concerns. But above it all, we have to agree that we cannot continue to protract the process of an election, even after the results have been out. We must have a system that we have faith in, that when Justina votes for you, Fred, and I don't vote for you, and you get into office, then the objective becomes supporting you to deliver the services to the Kenyans. Because even as the opposition, you wanted to lead this country. The same Kenyans are the people whom you wanted to come and lead. They made a different choice. And you cannot force a decision on Kenyans. So all of us need to rally behind the president, need to rally behind the government, criticize, support, and correct. Okay. Honestly so.
Final words? It almost sounded like a conclusion speech.
No, I think the president is doing his best. The government, he said, just to echo his sentiments in Kericho, he says, we know we are going through tough times. But we have to go through these tough times for us to get through it. So let's tone down the campaign. It's not yet time. It's time to work for Kenyans. It's time to support the government, criticize the government. And above it all, we need to remember we only have one nation, one country. Let's not start falling back to this party formation and tribal balkanization. No. Cost of living is what we need to bring down. In the next 1 week, or rather 3 weeks thereabout, let's support our kids to go through the examination process. Let's take it in stride, and we shall survive.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Josephat. Justina, your final words.
I want to remind Kenyans that politicians do not care about them. During the national dialogue at Bomas, many people, including churches, were saying we need to remove politicians from the IEBC selection panel. Let it be handled by other people. And the politicians were apprehensive. What am I saying? I'm telling politicians that they need to realize that they'll always not be in power. So they need to influence and legislate policies that make life easier for the ordinary Kenyan. Let them remember that one day they'll be ordinary Kenyans. Have they made life for the ordinary Kenyan easier? That's their challenge.
Okay. Thank you so much, Justina Omai. You want to add something?
No, I'm just asking, why is it we never comment on the Israel-Palestine?
Well,
Because it's something, I know it's a very touchy issue, but you know, an injustice in your neighborhood is an injustice that could spill over to you. Remember, we had the Arab Spring, so that's something to, you know, as a not just as a country, but as a people, as a world, we need to start having sentiments, and people should not be afraid to offer their opinion.
Yes.
But finally, I want to speak to CS Murkomen. He needs to address the menace at the express highway terminals. You'll find there's just like a single MTC operating terminal, where people have to queue for like 10, 15, 20 minutes. And traffic is building up, like the museum exit and quite a few others. And then you'll find like 3, 4 ETC terminals that are open, just cars driving through. All these are Kenyans who are paying. Let's balance the equation. Let's not just serve, but serve with dignity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Josephat Kamanya, political analyst,
But
and
now you
Justina.
need to add me one.
Now we'll continue like this. I will promise that I will invite you again on this panel. And Justina Omai, political analyst as well. Thank you so much for your opinions on the state of the nation. We've discussed quite a diverse, different headlines today, things that matter on the political scene and also in our social and social sector. It matters to do with education as well as healthcare. Let me now go through this editorial comment. The recent tragedy at the Mashujaa Day celebrations in Kericho County, where 5 people died in a stampede, highlights the urgent need for better and more meticulous planning for our national holidays. Such days hold significance as they are attended by the country's president and often feature the participation of foreign dignitaries. It is an occasion for the entire nation to come together and celebrate its heritage and achievements. The government's decision to rotate the hosting of national holidays to include different counties are commendable, as it provides an opportunity for citizens from across the country to witness these events, including military fanfare, up close. However, while this decision is laudable, it should be accompanied by meticulous planning. The excitement generated by such events in communities that rarely get to witness them is understandable. In the case of Kericho County, the fact that hundreds had gathered as early as 2 a.m., 7 hours before the event's scheduled start, should have been anticipated by the organizers. This level of enthusiasm from the public should have been met with adequate measures to ensure their safety and comfort. The tragic stampede and the subsequent loss of lives and injuries is an unfortunate testament to poor planning. The readiness of the venue and the availability of essential infrastructure and security personnel should be thoroughly assessed. It is inexcusable for construction to be incomplete, given that the event was planned months in advance. The safety and well-being of attendees should always be the top priority. Moreover, there should have been a better strategy for crowd management and ensuring order, with enough police officers to maintain control. As we join the bereaved families and communities in mourning their loved ones, we must say this: the deaths were needless, the injuries unnecessary, and a day of